In Sanskrit, it is called Navadvip, or 9 islands. So today we'll cover the last class on this topic. And we're still going over Sravanam, which is hearing or listening from the heart. Because there's so much content on this beautiful topic of the heart and how to do things from the heart. Now we're just understanding how to hear from the heart. I'm just going to list out a few principles that the yoga texts prescribe for us, and then we'll discuss it a little bit. It is explained that listening from the heart, it helps one to anchor oneself. And how is it help to anchor oneself? Because if the mind is the anchor of our existence, then we may be in 80,000 places in one day, and that's a lot of moving around. You may get very exhausted and feel lost if you have to do 80 things in one day. So therefore, it is explaining that if the mind is the anchor, or the intelligence is the anchor, and sometimes you'll be surprised, some of you are in the Chitta cleanse, you realize how the emotions and the traumas become the anchor of our life. And so therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam, this beautiful yoga text, is explaining that we have to figure out how to anchor ourselves in the heart through Sravanam, through listening from the heart. And it is also explained, the second point is that Sravanam, or attempting to hear from the heart, is the beginning of self-realization. Because everything in this world, according to yoga text, starts with the sound and goes with the sound and ends with the sound. So sound is the consistent companion. And through Sravanam, through hearing, we learn everything. It is our perception of the world. It's how we see the world. Someone might think, how is it possible to see the world through hearing? Through listening. You'll be surprised to know that when we are born into this world, there are many people, you may know, that are not able to see properly. But because they can hear, they can communicate. They have a very beautiful perception of the world. There are even amazing sages in the yoga text that we study about. One sage, his name is Vilva Mangala Thakur. He was blind on both the eyes, but he was able to see Krishna on his way to Vrindavan without the eyes. He could see Krishna with his ears, simply because he had heard so much about Krishna, who is the prince of Vrindavan, that he developed an attachment to this prince. But he could not see him because he didn't have the vision, the eyes to see him. But he had the ears. So as he was entering Vrindavan, he was actually able to see Krishna, and he was describing Krishna as he was seeing him. And those became some of the most beautiful poetic chants in the history of the devotional process of bhakti. How it is through hearing that we connect, and how it is through hearing we actually begin to fully experience the deepest forms of relationships. Our relationship to the world, when we're born, we didn't know how to communicate. All we could do was cry. If you were in pain, you cried. If you were hungry, you cried. If you were sad, you cried. And the mothers had to guess. The baby is hungry, the baby needs a change of diapers, baby is in pain, and baby needs a walk, baby has gas. So mothers are constantly guessing. and the baby is constantly listening to the mother, and thereby, because the baby is listening, thereby the baby is very easily able to pick up hearing, kills all the doubts. So the doubts in our world generally have a tendency to come from the mind. When the mind is constantly interacting with the world through the 5 sensory faculties, then the mind tends to have doubts. But when we start listening to the heart, because heart is the seat of fearlessness, because this is the seat of your existence, this is your home, this is where you are actually able to connect with the divine. So therefore, when we listen to the heart, we listen to our relationship and our connection with the divine, then it helps to kill the doubts of the mind. So this beautiful yoga text named Garuda Puran, I may just give you the names. If you want, you can go and read them and get lost in them. So this Garuda Puran is one of the 18 Puranas, 18 yoga texts, very beautiful text. It explains that this listening enables one to eventually reach self-realization. If you listen to the heart, if you listen to spiritual texts, which are representation, which are expressions of the hearts of the sages, that's what the yoga texts are. They're expressions, and they are the realizations, they're the ecstasies of the sages. They write them down. If we listen to them, then it can give us ability and tools and pave the path of self-realization or enlightenment. But it is in this Purana, Garuda Purana explains, that someone who does not take to the path of listening or Sravanam, then they're considered to be like a person who is unconscious, bitten by a snake. This metaphor that the yoga text gives may be a little difficult, so I'll explain it a little bit more. I grew up in a little monastery, not a little one, in India. And in this monastery, there used to be a lot of snakes. Anyone like snake stories? Many people like reptilian tales. So I'll tell you a story of the monastery. So this monastery was filled with a lot of snakes, a lot of cobras and vipers. And they were quite peacefully living in this place till we had an ashram there. So we had to live together in harmony with them. Sometimes that harmony is disrupted when it's dark and you're walking and you accidentally step on them. If you don't step on them, they'll leave you alone. If you don't do anything to them, they just go about their day, their business, and we go about our business. But if we accidentally step on them, then it's not a good scene. So they get upset and they have a tendency to strike back. So one day, it was one evening, sun was coming down, it was a little dark. So this young Russian boy in the monastery, he was one of the novice monks. He, did not pay attention, because yogis, they have to pay attention to where they're walking. It's called mindful walking. If you walk mindfully, then you won't step on snakes and vipers and cobras. But this boy, he was still practicing mindful walking, and he didn't get there yet. So he accidentally stepped on a viper, and the viper turned around and struck him in the foot. This is not a made-up story. This is a true story of my life as the head of the monastery. So when that happened, everyone screamed, this is what happens. Everybody gets together. And then I go there and I tie his foot to make sure the blood circulation doesn't go up to his heart. And then we put him on a bicycle. And then we all push and rush and run to the snake charmer. They're called the snake doctors. What they do is when you go to them, they chant mantras. They chant mantras and they also worship the snakes. And they chant mantras and they bring out their snake. And together the poison starts to go down. And then they just suck out the poison. Only with mantras. Only with sound. And eventually, that person, he is no longer unconscious. He comes back to consciousness. So this is how this process works of snake biting. So these yogis are explaining that to not listen to the heart means we are in an unconscious state. Our actions are driven by the mind and the senses and the objects and the material world. But when we come to the stage of waking ourselves up, and how do we do it? We do it with Sravanam. We have to listen to the heart. And in the yoga text, very clearly explains that what is a mantra? The snake charmer is able to chant mantras and pull the poison out of this person and gives them back consciousness. Of course, that boy survived, so nothing to worry. This was a common thing that happened in the villages, that somebody gets bitten by a snake, they chant mantras, they wake him back up, and the poison is gone. It's a common practice. So, the principle that the yoga text is explaining, that through Sravanam, through hearing, through the chanting of the mantras, one is then able to awaken one's spiritual consciousness. Because right now we are completely entangled. When we are interacting with the material world, it's very easy to be entangled in the sensory perceptions, with the mind and the desires. And then what happens is that we become unconscious to the needs of the heart. It's like the heart does not even exist unless there is some pain and suffering. So there is no consciousness of the heart. It is only consciousness of the mind and the senses and the objects of the senses. So that state, according to this yoga text from Garuda Puran, it explains it is the state of unconsciousness, because you are not consciously living our lives. Therefore, this mantras are sound vibration that is coming from a chain of disciplic succession. These mantras are called transcendental. That means it transcends the material world. The very term mantra, man means mind, and tra means trayate. That means it transcends the mind. Because these mantras are coming from the transcendental realm, so when we chant these mantras, it helps us to take us out of our mind and out of our intelligence and place us very beautifully in our heart, and thereby making us conscious. Just like someone who is bitten by a snake. There is a need for mantra chanting, and that mantra chanting removes one from the shackles. It is explained that sound in this material world causes us bondage. It shackles us. How does that work? If you look at your life, if you look at the kind of music that we listen to, it keeps you in a certain mental space. And the words that people tell us, right? It shackles us. The good words, they hold us bondage, and we are very careful how we communicate with others. So sound causes bondage. And the sound can also cause one to reach self-realization and enlightenment, and even give one the experience of the highest form of spiritual ecstasy, which is called prema bhakti, from within the heart. So therefore, this text is explaining that we have to understand the power of Sravanam, the power of listening. The power of listening can shackle us to this world, and that same power of sound, a different form of sound, can also be the cause of our liberation, the cause of our enlightenment, cause of our experiencing the highest spiritual experience of prema bhakti, of transcendental unconditional pure love. So this is very, very strongly emphasized in the yoga text, the Sravanam, that we must learn to listen to our hearts, because it is by listening to the heart, by listening to transcendental vibrations, and not to the vibrations that shackles us. I remember one time a student once came crying, and then I said, "Why are you sad? Why are you crying?" He said, "Because we were driving, and one person I thought wanted some directions, rolled down his window and said something so mean to me. And just those words, just those sound vibrations have caused her so much pain that she was in tears. And she, to this day, have not forgotten those words that this person has used. And that person had no relation to her. But it is that sound, that those words that shackled her to so much pain and suffering. And as you may also know, in our Chitta cleanse, we are studying how those words are so impactful that they affect us throughout our whole entire life. It can completely lift someone up, or it can completely destroy someone. It is simply those sound that is completely endowed with the power to destroy one's self-worth, one's belief, one's understanding of what reality is, can be altered simply through sound. People judge themselves because someone said you're not beautiful, and then they believe it, and then they dwell on it, and it becomes who they are, simply through sound. So therefore, the Sravanam is the antidote, is the prescription that is given by the yoga text. It is a prescription for reaching self-realization. And we must somehow or other find a way to utilize this medicine, this prescription that is given to us, to listen to the heart, to listen from the heart, and try to figure out a way to make time to do the Heartspace meditation and come to the heart. And this process in yoga text is called submission through oral reception. Why is this submission through oral reception? Sravanam means submission through oral reception. What does that mean? It means in order for you to listen from your heart, there has to be submission. You cannot fight it. The mind only fights. Only when we practice humility and we submissively listen, we have a level of humility that we practice, then we can listen from the heart. Like right now I'm speaking, some of you may take it to your mind, some of you may take it to your intelligence, some of you may allow my realizations to enter your heart and pave a little path for you to be able to situate yourself in the heart. So this submissive oral reception is called Sravanam, that we have to humbly, sincerely take time to listen from the heart. And the process that enables that is the heart space meditation mantra that I had given you. And those of you that attended the kirtan yesterday in Connecticut, and we had kirtan here in Atlanta, this mantra meditation is the sound vibration that paves the way. So again, Sravanam is submissive oral reception. And the next point that I make is that the Sravanam is the soul of all knowledge. It is the soul. If you ever want to change anything, you have to do Sravanam. You have to let those instructions, that sound vibration, come to your heart. You cannot learn something. Most of you who go to school, you learn so many things, so many concepts, and when you graduate, when you get to work, you probably forgot 50%, if not 60% of what you have learned. Am I correct? Is that how it is? That's what I'm told. Or if not more. Because that material knowledge, jada vidya, it does not go and enter the heart. So it is simply a space that it takes over some mental space and some intellectual space. The real estate that it takes over is the mind and the intellect. But if we do real Sravanam, that means we understand and hear about spiritual subject matters that lifts the heart and places the heart in a transcendental realm. And that is called Sravanam, that we hear about spiritual subject matters or subject matters that lift you up. Because there is unlimited number of topics in the world and things that we can talk about. That you turn on the TV, you turn on the radio, you talk to your friends, it's just non-stop mundane material topics that go on, and it does not lift you up. And so therefore, Sravanam means how to get to one's heart through enabling our heart to open up through the Heartspace meditation mantra. And from there, it opens up the ability to have knowledge of everything in the world. Because the seat of all knowledge is you. We have all the knowledge there is to know in the world, and it is situated in the heart. But because we are not in the heart, we are not able to tap into that transcendental, unlimited reservoir of spiritual knowledge. So the reservoir of all knowledge is in the heart. And that is why we think we don't have the answers. That is why we ask other people, what do you think? And we try to get answers from others. Many of you know that as children, those of you who have children, they are constantly asking questions. Mommy, why? Can you study? Why? Let's go here. Why? Let's go there. Why? Everything you say, they want to know why. Because they are genuinely seeking answers that will actually fulfill and nourish their heart and have meaning. And in fact, what we do, we just tell them that if you study, then you can become rich. You can become famous. People will respect you. The answers that we give them are means. The answers we give them should be the meaning of life, not the means of life. Most people in this world are very, very focused on addressing the means of life, taking care of necessities, material necessities. But to understand the meaning of life, to actually situate yourself into the heart space where you can actually have access to spiritual knowledge, to the divine knowledge, because the divinity is situated in the heart. The divinity is not situated in the mind or the intellect. So now I want to just, the 3 points, final 3 points. Listening, it falls on different categories. There's listening in the mode of ignorance. When you listen to something or someone, it is, you can categorize them in this 4 different categories. One is the mode of ignorance. It's called tamas in Sanskrit, tamaguna, or the mode of ignorance. And that is when you listen with fear. When you grow up or when you interact with people, when they are saying something so harsh and heavy and instilling fear into you, so that listening falls in the mode of ignorance. That means listening out of fear. And listening out of fear has such an impact, mode of ignorance, because we are by nature very pure, loving souls. And when you add this such a strong, dark element in our life of listening from fear, that will take an impact all throughout our lives. So this mode of ignorance is then thereby becomes our default mode, so to say. If we don't acknowledge the impact of listening and how this listening has to transcend and come to the level of Sravanam. So therefore, the yoga text is explaining that listening from the mode of ignorance is listening out of fear. And then there's listening in the mode of passion, which is when you hear things that makes you want to gain something. Like when people tell you about how to make money, then you get so excited. Oh, I can make money this way. And you get so excited. So that stimulates the mode of passion. So that is called listening in the mode of passion, where you can go out and get something, to acquire material possessions, to acquire material wealth, to acquire material name, fame, and prestige. So that is listening in the mode of passion. And then there's listening in the mode of goodness. When we listen, we understand the importance of duty, and it gives us faith. So this duty and faith, thank you, Veena. So this listening in the mode of goodness means when we listen with duty, there's many times you listen to people just because it's your duty to listen to them. You do it out of duty. There's nothing else to it. Your husband is screaming and, you just have to sit there and listen. And then there is Sravanam, which is listening out of love, with compassion, that you genuinely care, that you have genuine interest in supporting and helping this person and being there for that person. So this is called Sravanam, listening from the heart. This listening in the mode of ignorance, passion, goodness, and then there's Sravanam, listening from the heart.